Loneliness from the night always attracted me. There was something in the stillness that became all simpler. Welder, there is more than 4 decades. I reside in one vast rural property, only me and mine dog, Spike. The house, excessively spacious to one only person, resists any attempt to reduce size. After my mother's passing, wife, Susan, and the departure of my children, there are many years. Life is just me and Spike. Right night, after a long working day in the workshop, I decided to take a walk. The extension from my property allows a single circuit, generally enough to satiate my need for air-free. The air was cool and refreshing, and Spike, my loyal companion, ran to my side. Sometimes I have the impression that he loves me more than I to him. Already I walked that one path countless times, but at return home, something woke up my attention. My look fixed on second window walk, to which gave to the room that Susan and we shared. For a moment, I had the impression of sighting something in movement. I stopped in the middle of the road, looking out the window. No, there was reason apparent for someone's presence there. No attended that room there is years. The idea of an intruder in my residence made me feel the blood boil. No would tolerate such invasion. I ran to inside the house, with the heart fired. I climbed the stairs, with the step accelerated. The room was empty, exactly as I had left him. None sign of disturbance. I examined all the imaginable corners, but no, I found nothing. Although scared, the feeling predominant was one of indignation. I do not submit to such trivia. I concluded what there was just been deceived for my mind. I stood there for a while, feeling foolish, but unable to shake the feeling that something really he was there. At night next, I woke up to Spike growling. He is a dog exceptionally calm, that rarely barks unless something justifies it. Sitting in the bed, I heard a creaking coming from upstairs. Could to have been just the sounds of an old house, but my mind immediately associated the noise with footsteps heavy above me. No, it would be difficult to guess which room was it above mine. Despite from the temptation to take my hunting rifle, I preferred no go so far away. Case necessary, he was trusting in defending myself. I got my flashlight and went up again. Nothing. The room remained untouched. The anger, in this point, gave place to one growing seizure. Something he was wrong with the house. In the night subsequent to down the stairs, the lights from the kitchen, they were lit. Either was deleted all the lights before going to sleep. No, I leave lights lit without need. No, there was more doubts. Anyone he was in my house. The panic began to dominate me. I called to the police, reporting my suspected intruders. The police officers carried out one thorough search, but found nothing. Although kind, your posture suggested disbelief in my narrative. At night following was the most distressing, impossible sleep. I decided to check the room again. To the opening the door, I froze. Clothes scattered for the floor. Susan's clothes stored away after your match. Something like this, no, it happens put chance. And then I saw her. One woman stop in the door, staring at me. No could distinguish your face, but you knew what was Aunt Susan. Her height was very minor. No knew that one person. I felt the fear more intense of my life. Without hesitate, I ran in your direction. She turned and walked down the stairs in shot, disappearing for the door from the front. I looked for it in property with Spike, but no, I found traces her. Lack of sleep became chronic. The anxiety, constant. Each noise, each whisper, disturbed me. I slept with my rifle next to me, side from the bed, fearing the need to use it. The idea of asking help to my brother, although present in my thoughts, was rejected. I was educated to always take care of myself sane. One night, sitting in the living room, I noticed one figure standing in the yard, looking to me for the window. It was her again. My heart stopped. I got my rifle and left. Spike next my side. He was there, one silhouette under the light from the moon. I fired some warning shots in the air in hope of scaring her. It was enough. She turned and disappeared in the darkness. The situation no improved. He was being tormented put one strange, possibly homeless. No could understand the reason. I went left in peace, but anguish persists. I know what that no go to finish so early. I am prepared to defend myself, but to live in constant anxiety is not sustainable. I thank God for Spike. No, I know what would without he. I will send one update if anything to happen. Some time ago, I received an unexpected visitor at my home. It was Paolo, a young catering worker who juggled night shifts and exhausting trips with the company truck. His expression that night did not hide his tiredness, but there was something else, a discomfort that seemed greater than simple fatigue. It was then that he told me what had happened during one of his lonely early mornings. Paolo explained that he was heading home after another long shift. It was around 2 in the morning, and he felt his stomach growling with hunger. He decided to go through the drive-thru at a nearby McDonald's, an occasional habit he cultivated at these times. Despite the late hour, he noticed something strange. An old Volkswagen with tinted windows, parked alone in the corner of the parking lot. At the time, he didn't pay much attention, just thought it was curious that someone was there, since the restaurant only served through the drive-thru at that time. After picking up his meal, Paolo decided to drive to a quiet place to eat. He chose the nature reserve near his home, a place he had often visited in his youth. When he arrived there, he found the parking lot empty, but before he could turn off the car, he saw the headlights of another vehicle approaching. It was the same Volkswagen from McDonald's. Paolo began to feel a growing unease. Have I been followed? He thought. To avoid the uneasiness, he called a close friend, Lucas, and asked him to join him. If he doesn't answer, I'll eat in the car and go straight home, the young man said. To his surprise, Lucas answered quickly and said he would be there in 10 minutes. As I waited, the discomfort only grew. The Volkswagen remained parked, motionless, with the tinted windows closed. It was only when Lucas arrived that Paolo was able to relax a little. They decided to walk to the viewpoint, a place they both frequented as teenagers. The view from up there, with the city lights stretching out on the horizon, always helped to dispel their worries. However, when they reached the top, the peace was short-lived. 3 men appeared on the path, coming towards them. They seemed to be sharing a cigarette, perhaps a joint, and laughing among themselves. Despite their initially friendly demeanor, Paolo noticed something strange in the way the 3 men moved, as if each step was overly calculated. One of the men, who seemed to be the leader, came closer, with visible tattoos and an enigmatic smile. He offered Paolo and Lucas a cigarette, which they politely declined. But then Paolo couldn't resist his curiosity. "Were you at McDonald's just now?" he asked, trying to sound casual. The group froze. The leader stopped smiling, and the other 2 exchanged uncomfortable glances. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. It was then that Paolo remembered. There were 4 people in the Volkswagen, not 3. The 4th individual was missing. Before he could express his concern, the leader of the group responded, breaking the tension. He opened his sweatshirt, revealing the McDonald's uniform underneath. "We work at the restaurant. After our shifts, we always come here to relax," he said, his voice seeming to hide his discomfort. Even with the explanation, something about the situation didn't feel right. Paul and Luke decided it was time to head down. As they walked away, Paul noticed something in the trees. He stopped, pointing in the direction. The 4th man was there, hidden in the shadows, holding something they couldn't identify. When he saw that he had been spotted, he began moving toward them. The 2 didn't wait to find out what it was he had in his hands. They started running down the trail with the sound of footsteps behind them. They looked back and saw the other 3 men following the 4th, all now in a frantic chase. Adrenaline took over. When they finally reached the parking lot, they quickly got into their cars and sped off. The men also ran to the Volkswagen, but the 2 friends managed to escape. Paolo told me that he didn't go straight home. He was afraid that they were being followed. He decided to meet Lucas on a nearby street, where he could check if he was safe. Fortunately, it seemed that they had lost their pursuers. Still, what happened that night continued to bother him. The next day, determined to clarify the situation, Paolo returned to McDonald's to report the incident. He showed the photo that Lucas had taken of the men and the Volkswagen. The young employee who answered was frightened when he saw it. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he said. Then he told a terrifying story. One of the men in the photo, the one in the Volkswagen, had worked at McDonald's until he was fired. He had harassed an employee, his ex-girlfriend, and even stalked her outside of work. After several incidents, the police intervened and he was given a restraining order. But that didn't stop him from continuing to hang around the place. Paolo and Lucas left McDonald's shaken. I couldn't believe what I heard. Although the employee had cleared up part of the mystery, many questions still lingered in the air. Why did they follow Paolo? Why was he wearing a McDonald's uniform that night when he had been fired many days earlier? And what was the fourth man holding as he hid in the shadows? "This isn't just a coincidence," Paolo told me, clearly distressed. The feeling I had, that look in their eyes, it wasn't just intimidation, it was something more. I tried to reassure him, but I also felt a chill inside me. While many stories have rational explanations, not all the pieces of the puzzle from that night fit together perfectly. There was something sinister about that chase, something that may never have been fully revealed. However, the prudent thing to do would be to take some kind of action. I told Paul that he and Lucas should report the incident to the police. Even if the men did not, had committed no direct crime against them, the suspicious behavior and the connection to the former employee's history of harassment could be important to the authorities. Paolo casually, albeit reluctantly, promised to contact the police that same day. In the meantime, I suggested they take precautions. Avoid driving through these areas at night and keep an eye out for any suspicious movements, I advised. I also asked them to write down the license plate of the Volkswagen in case they saw it again, so that they could provide more information to the authorities. In the days that followed, Paolo and Lucas tried to get back to their routines, but the feeling of unease remained. Lucas sent me a message saying that he could not forget the face of the man hiding among the trees. He had something strange in his eyes, as if he were calculating their every move. The police, when informed of the incident, promised to investigate, especially since the former employee already had a worrying history. However, as often happens, the case did not seem to be a priority unless something more serious happened. A few weeks later, Paolo came back to see me. He was visibly shaken. "Epaminondas, you won't believe what happened," he began. He reported that, as he was passing by a street near his house, he saw the Volkswagen again, parked a few meters from his residence. "I don't think they saw me, but it was as if fate was teasing me, showing me that this isn't over yet," he said. From that day on, Paolo decided to change his routine. He avoided nighttime hours and predictable routes. Lucas did the same. They were certain that they would not become victims, but the fear would be permanent. After he finished telling me the story, Paolo asked me again, "Pastor, do you think this is just paranoia? Or is there something bigger behind this?" I stared at him for a moment, thinking, "Paolo, I can't say exactly what it is, but I know one thing. Evil, whether human or from the spiritual world, likes to exploit our fears. Don't let it dominate you, but don't ignore the signs either. Vigilance and prudence are our greatest weapons." Paolo nodded, thanked him, and said goodbye. As he walked away, he couldn't help but think that this story wasn't over. Some coincidences are harmless, but others have deeper roots, roots that can be dark and dangerous. The question remains which one this was. Frank's account of the night at the old church. Forgive me if I don't remember every detail, but this story was told to me by a young man named Frank some time ago. He was from the small town of Maplewood, Indiana, a place where things used to be pretty peaceful. Frank, like many teenagers, was always looking for something to do with his friends. In his case, it was exploring abandoned places. One such adventure took him to an old church on the outskirts of town, which stood on the side of Willow Road Creek. It was a place they visited sometimes, and Frank still remembers the address, 1932 Willow Creek Road. The church had been closed for years, surrounded by stories that no one could confirm. For them, it was just a place to find excitement and a little adrenaline. One fall evening, with the air chilly and the sky overcast, Frank and his friends decided to return to the church. The group consisted of him, Mia, Rachel, Tommy, Chris, and Clara. As usual, they had to climb over a wire fence to get in, since all the doors were boarded up. We used a side window as a passageway, which seemed to have been forgotten by those responsible for securing the place. Upon entering, the first thing they noticed was the oppressive darkness and the flooring of the main floor, or rather, the lack thereof. Someone had ripped out all the floorboards, leaving a gap in the center that revealed a concrete staircase to the basement. The basement had always been their destination, as it was the most exciting place in the old church. The space had 3 rooms. 2 had no doors, just frames, and the third had an old, creaky door. They arrived at night in the first room, a large, empty hall except for some old, broken furniture. There was a destroyed sofa and fallen chairs, as if someone had abandoned the place in a hurry years ago. As they laughed and drank, something interrupted their fun. A door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the basement, so loud that Frank swore he could feel the floor vibrating. The group froze. At first, I thought one of them had accidentally slammed the door, but no one was near it. Mia, Rachel, and Tommy didn't hesitate. They ran upstairs, leaving Frank, Chris, and Clara behind. Frank admitted that his heart was racing, but he decided to stay. He believed it was just the wind and didn't want to look like a coward. So the 3 of them went to investigate. Opening the door he had knocked on, he found a small room. The first detail that caught F's attention was an old dresser with a cracked mirror. On the mirror were red stains. At first, he thought it was old paint, but as he got closer, he remembered that it was something more strange. The stains were still damp, with a sticky sheen, as if someone or something had been there recently. Then something else caught his eye, an old photo on top of the dresser. It was a black and white image of a woman in a wedding dress. She was smiling, but the smile felt wrong. The photo gave off an unsettling feeling that Frank couldn't explain. Before he could even begin to analyze what he was feeling, a terrifying sound came from another room. It was as if something had moved where they had been standing moments before. Chris and Clara decided it was time to leave, and Frank didn't argue. They grabbed their things and ran back to the window, climbing over the fence and back to the safety of the road. Before they drove off, Frank looked back and saw something he would never forget. A silhouette in the open window, motionless, watching them. They never returned to church together, and Frank said he avoided talking about that night for a long time. Years later, he returned to the road, but the church was no longer there. It had been torn down, and whatever secrets the place held were gone along with its bricks and boards. As he finished his story, Frank looked at me and said, "Epaminondas." I still don't know what we saw that night. I may never know. I'm just grateful I wasn't alone, because if I had been, I would have doubted everything.